Many parents use different techniques to teach their kids. Some take a Danny Tanner approach and do things in a full house style. They sit down with their kids and they discuss why certain actions were either harmful or wrong and why they shouldn't have done them. Then they hug it out and try and do better next time. Others will ground their kids, take away their cell phones, or spank them. And these are things that most of us can relate to and have experience with as children or as parents ourselves. And though almost all of them are effective in getting your kids to listen or to stop doing something, one of these methods is much more harmful than the others and has quite a few side effects, and that's spanking. This can also be considered physical punishment or corporal punishment, so I'll refer to this in either of those terms. Today I'd like to talk to you about the harmful effects of corporal punishment and why we should look for other methods to teach our children or to discipline them. Some of the things I'm going to talk about are how corporal punishment can have serious psychological effects on your kids, and it can affect them later on in life. I'm going to talk about how physical punishment teaches your kids the wrong things, and then afterwards I'm going to show you some better ways to discipline your kids that will be more effective in the long run and will have better benefits for them. So we all want to be the best parents possible, and spanking your child may seem like a quick fix, but it really will just lead to more problems, as corporal punishments has psychological effects that most people don't even realize. Some of the side effects it can have are aggression, delinquency, antisocial behavior, poor relationships, and impaired mental health. Susan Batensky did a study on physical punishment and said that it is stunningly deleterious at every developmental level. So it's really harmful for them mentally and physically and emotionally, and it's going to affect them later on in life. They're not going to have strong relationships with those around them because they don't know how to talk through things. They're going to be aggressive later on in life. And so really, corporal punishment is one of the last resorts that people should go to if they go to it at all. I say that you should probably avoid it in any circumstance if possible. Physical punishment is linked with a greater degree of behavioral problems in children, even if the parents are good and loving. So a lot of people will say, well, I love my kids, I'm doing it out of love, I'm not actually hurting them. And Science Daily talked about this and said that it is associated with an increased probability of subsequent child behavior problems, regardless of culture and regardless of whether it was done by loving and helpful parents. So of course, corporal punishment is worse and more harmful if it's coupled with verbal abuse or any type of yelling. But it's still harmful whether or not you're doing those things, and it should be avoided. Family Education has also said some things against physical punishment and have warned against it towards parents. They said it teaches your children that violence is an acceptable way to express anger and deal with conflict. And this contradicts how you're trying to raise your child. So we talked about this a second ago about how physical punishment can lead to your child being more aggressive and violent, and it's especially true with their future spouse. So you want to raise a child who is loving and is going to be a great parent and a great spouse to their future husband or wife. But if you are spanking your child or hitting them in any form, they are more likely to be aggressive toward their own spouse and hit them because they understand, because of how they grew up, that physical reactions is how you deal with anger and stress. And so spanking your child will really lead to bad effects when they are married or older with a significant other. Spanking also leads to higher crime rates and a higher likelihood of ending up in jail. Murray Strauss from the University of New Hampshire found that university students who were spanked by both parents are associated with the greatest increase in criminality for 8 out of the 9 criminality measures. So if you spank your child, they are more likely to end up in jail than children who were not spanked at all when they were children. He did this study among university students, and they had them fill out questionnaires of how often they were spanked and who they were spanked by. And if they were spanked by both parents, the outcome is worse than if it was done by just one parent. Either way, it's not good, but it really should be avoided, especially by both parents. Spanking in general just leads to teaching your kids that violence is an acceptable answer to anger. And so the higher crime rates are usually due to a child thinking that if something goes wrong or I'm angry, the way to deal with this is to hit or to react violently or physically. And so in all cases, it should be avoided. It's really harmful for them and could put them in jail. I know it sounds a little far-fetched because you don't think like that your physical discipline is going to make your child steal or become abusive, but it really can because they don't understand why their parents are doing that. Most of the time it's not explained, and even when it is, all the child can remember is my mom and dad hit me. So it's really setting them up for a lot of consequences and problems later on in life. There are, however, great ways to discipline your child and to teach them better ways of handling their anger and their emotions. And I would like to talk about these with you because spanking has no connection usually to what the child has done wrong. So a better way to parent them or discipline them is to give them a consequence that is linked with their behavior. So if they come home late, you should give them an earlier curfew because it shows them that I don't want you out late. So your punishment or your discipline is to come home earlier. So I know you're going to be home by 10 o'clock if that's their curfew, whatever you choose. This shows them that anything that they do is going to have a consequence, and it's linked, because when you're physically disciplining them, it usually doesn't make sense with whatever they've done wrong. So if they've stolen something, giving them a smack on the hand doesn't relate at all to stealing. But if you make them work and pay back for whatever they stole, that has a real life connection. And so they're learning real life consequences from their behavior. Another thing that you can do is talk to them when they've done something wrong and show them why their behavior is unacceptable. And this is usually coupled with some type of grounding or taking away their cell phone or something along those lines. But it's really important before any type of discipline that you talk to your kids about what happened and why there's a consequence to that action. Science Daily said that increasing the child's capacity to put words to feelings and actions results in increased tension regulation, self-awareness, and thoughtful decision-making. So this method of showing them what they've done wrong is going to teach them how to make better decisions later on, because they're going to understand why the thing that they did affected another person. So if they stole a candy bar from a store and you explain to them that the store owner makes their money from selling things, and if they're stealing them, that's like that person isn't going to make their money and be able to afford the things that they need. If you explain that to a child, they're much more likely to understand why they can't behave in that manner, and they're more likely to not do it in the future. So again, just remember to talk to your kids. Really know that corporal punishment is not effective. It has serious psychological effects on kids, and it's not worth everything that's going to happen. It may seem like a quick fix, but it's not worth all of the future punishments and future consequences that they're going to have. Remember that it teaches your kids that violence is the answer, and that's not what we want our youth to know. And know that if you really talk to your children, they're going to learn a lot more than they would from physical punishment. And though many people may say that they turned out fine even though they were spanked, this doesn't mean that physical punishment is an effective teaching tool. Keep in mind that you're setting them up to succeed later in life by giving them ways to cope with anger that are not violent. Keep working on your communication with your kids, and one day you will be just like Danny Tanner from Full House.